push for autonomy. I think Tobago, and by extension Trinidad and Tobago, is at a critical stage in our growth as a nation and our growth as an island. And we are at a very important juncture. And once again, the People's National Movement has been called upon to lead the conversation. Once again, the People's National Movement will take responsibility for leading the conversation on Tobago's additional autonomy. And so this evening, we begin the first of two town hall meetings, and we will wrap up these conversations with a youth conversation next week, Sunday afternoon. But we begin this one in Belgarden. Next week, Saturday evening, we make road or way to Buku for the second town hall meeting. And this is an opportunity for citizens, residents of Tobago to ask pertinent questions. You have been hearing from the People's National Movement its position on the two bills that are currently before the Parliament. But we also want to create an avenue for you to ask your questions. If you have a question that is burning, you don't fully understand what is taking place, you don't even understand what is autonomy. And this is the opportunity for you to ask your questions. We also will be taking questions. Persons can send in their questions via WhatsApp. I know everybody has the political leader's number, so I don't know if he's willing to accept questions and those questions can be asked. But you could put your questions on the live because we are streaming this event live. You can post your questions on the live and we will do our best to answer your questions. So I want to welcome all of us who are here, members of the Tobago Council of the People's National Movement, our MPs, both East and West. I will introduce them a little more later on, and our political leader. And we also want to welcome all of you who are sitting in the audience and those who are viewing online. And so at this time, the format that the program is going to take is that we're going to have brief remarks from our panelists, right where they are sitting. I think the last time we had all three on stage was at our meeting in Cutler Hall, where all three did a fantastic job in laying out the case and promoting Tobago's autonomy. And so this evening they're here again to answer questions. The format is that they're going to have a few minutes to bring remarks on the areas that they would have touched on in the last meeting, and then the floor will be opened for us to ask our questions. So ladies and gentlemen, we have with us this evening the MP for Tobago West and Minister of Sports and Community Development, Mrs. Shamfa Cudjoe-Lewis. We also have with us the MP for Tobago East and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for gender and child affairs, Mrs. Ayana Webster-Roy. And we know this man in the middle, no introduction necessary, but our political leader of the Tobago Council, Senator Ansel Dennis. And so at this time, I want to invite to speak very briefly to us, MP for Tobago West, Mrs. Shamfa Cudjoe-Lewis, to bring brief remarks for us. You can stay there if you so desire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hearty good evening extended to each and every one of you. We gather this evening to go through the provisions or all that we have to look at as it relates to internal self-government for Tobago. This evening, I think the conversation should be more about going through. Testing.
There we go.
Okay, better.
There we go.
Better, okay. So once again, a hearty good evening to each and every one. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it is safe to say this is all business. This is all our business. We have been deliberate about this journey as it relates to internal self-government for Tobago for a very long time. I remember being in attendance at the National Convention, I think it was in 2015, when the People's National Movement made the matter of internal self-government for Tobago a matter of the PNM's business. And we decided that we are going to develop that policy not only from a party perspective, but once we get into government, we're in opposition at the time of that convention. And we said to the people, once we get into government, this is going to be a priority matter for us. So from 2015, when we assumed duties as the government of Trinidad and Tobago to this date, that has been a #1 priority for us in the government. In 2016, the Orville Delano London administration and the Tobago House of Assembly passed a motion in the THA with unanimous support from all sides. Well, at that point in time, I believe we had no opposition in the House. Yeah, and after having consultations, over 42 consultations throughout Tobago and in Trinidad also, from 2007 to 2016, with the last or the final large consultation being held in Signal Hill with over 600 persons voting in support of the work that we had done over the years. We decided that we are going to send this document, send the Tobago's position, where we as Tobagoans speak with one voice to central government, because we know the only way that we can have the laws changed in our favor is through the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. No matter how much we argue among ourselves, have discussions, shout across the waters, laws are made only one place in Trinidad and Tobago. That is the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. And as much as we strongly believe that the Tobago House of Assembly should be given lawmaking powers, the only way to get that done is by having the legislation changed in the Parliament. And that is a part of what is being proposed, what is before a committee of the whole now in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. You could jump high, jump low. There is no way around it other than to do the necessary work in the Parliament and get the support of not only the government. If it's one thing this country and Tobagonians can bet on, it's the support of the People's National Movement. However, this change in legislation requires a 3/4 majority. And in the lower house, with 41 seats, we would need 31 votes. We, the government, the People's National Movement, we have only 22 votes. That means we have to convince, Tobagonians have to convince a good 9 opposition members to vote in favor before we can even get to the upper house or to the Senate, where the total is about 30. Yes? And you have to get about 21 or 22 votes. With the government having only 15 spots, that means you need to convince 6 opposite, yes, or independent. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's not only a PNM fight, it's a Tobago fight. And that is why we had taken the decision many years ago to operate from a place of Tobago first. We as Tobagonians coming to one position, one accord, and speaking to Trinidad, speaking to central government, convincing our colleagues or peers or family members or friends across the waters that this is the Tobago position and therefore we should support it. No other time in history, when we look at this journey or this battle for internal self-government and more autonomy for Tobago, have we ever seen so much consultation, where we have gone the length and breadth of Tobago and the length and breadth of Trinidad
making the document available to citizens, having conversations with citizens, going through clause by clause. I remember being a member of the Joint Select Committee, and there is not one comment that was submitted by any citizen or anybody contributing to the discourse that was not considered, reviewed, contemplated, considered, discussed, deliberated by the Joint Select Committee. So every single comment, every statement, in addition to the wide consultation, I know that there is no other time in our history that we have had the privilege and the opportunity to engage international experts, lawyers, technical persons from the United Nations, from other countries that had similar experiences, like St. Kitts Nevis, the Attorney General of St. Kitts Nevis, the Premier of Nevis, and the list goes on and on and on. We locally, from the CPC to the different lawyers in their different corners, real estate agents, Reggie Dumas, God rest his soul, you name it, Tobagonians wade in from far and wide. When we closed off in April of 2021, we placed the document in the public domain so that everybody would have an opportunity to review, to contemplate, and to ask their questions as we prepare to go out to do another set of consultations as the Joint Select Committee. 2 weeks after, we made our way to Tobago, and on April 30th in 2021, we met with stakeholders from Tobago, from the Tobago House of Assembly to the business chamber. We invited them all to come to the fore. And then on the 1st, which was the Saturday, we invited the general public to come in and have the conversation. Then we opened up and allowed Trinbagonians from far and wide. We made the documents available at KFC, the library, the port, the airport, at the offices of your MPs. Wherever you name it, we had the copies there. There were videos online to allow Trinbagonians the opportunity to access the document and to weigh in. So we then went to Parliament and got to the stage of committee. At that point in time, we knew that we didn't have the support of the opposition, and there are many who said, why didn't you take it to a vote? Maybe they would have voted. But if we had taken it to a vote, we would have lost the research. And if that vote wasn't passed, we would have lost the research and lost all the work that was put in, and we would have had to start all over again. And ladies and gentlemen, from 2007 to date of consultation and drafting and crafting the legislation, that would not have been something wise for us to do as a government. So we are now at committee stage, a committee of the whole. We are done with the work of, we've completed the work of the Joint Select Committee, brought it to the Parliament. The Parliament has adopted the report of the Joint Select Committee. And the Joint Select Committee is made up of, is a committee, a joint committee, as it says, of selected people from each house. The government side, the opposition side, the lower house, the upper house, and the independents. So we have spent good time meeting. In the last session, we met over 22 times, crafting the legislation, getting the advice, bringing in international persons to weigh in via the internet, have them sit in and be a part of the conversation. So to those who are saying we need more consultation, there's always going to be somebody who feels like we need some more consultation. We could consult another 10, 20, 30 years and never close the works or never end what we are doing. That would not be wise, because you have the benefit of the members of Parliament who had been a part of the research, been a part of the Joint Select Committee, and this parliamentary term is about to come to an end. We don't know who the next set of parliamentarians will be or what their positions would be. A matter of fact, when we first started the Joint Select Committee, you had persons like Clarence Rambarat on the committee. He's no longer a member of the Parliament. You had persons like Ramona Ramdial on the committee. She's no longer a member of parliament. So times have changed and parliamentarians are turning over. And you just don't know who you're going to get next. I hear those opposite in Tobago, those who are leading in the assembly, but opposite to us as a national government, saying, let's get the 2 Tobago seats and we are going to give Tobago internal self-government. If you have any sense in your head, you know that that is utter foolery, because it takes 41 votes. With only 2 Tobago seats, you need 31 of those 41 votes, of those 41 seats. You need 31 persons to say yes. 2 seats cannot carry you. You understand what I'm saying? In the lower house, in the upper house, 2 seats cannot carry you. And this is not only a conversation of Tobagonians, or because this affects not only Tobago development, it affects national development. What is interesting is how far we have gone and how much we have been able to convince Trinidadians to agree to what we're asking without any major pushback. Yes, a matter of fact, when we brought the debate to the House the last time, interestingly, the opposition, UNC, started saying, you have not spoken to Trinidadians enough. And there's need for more consultation with Trinidadians because you are taking from us to give Tobago more. So I must commend the Prime Minister for making this matter a priority, and members of government. It's interesting because I remember when Kamala Persad-Bissessar brought her bill with no consultation. I think it was what year was it? Around 2012? 2013, and just in time, 5 days before the THA election. There was no consultation, there was no saving of the work. There was no coming back after that. So they were in power 2013, 2014, 2015, and they never brought back the matter to the fore. We didn't get to where we wanted to be in 2021, and here we are again, remaining committed to the cause and trying to deliver on our promise. And it's not only about the PNM's promise to the nation, it's about making good on the work and delivering on the dreams and aspirations of every Tobagonian. And people who are TPP, what are the other ones? PDP, IDA, all the others, right? As long as you're a Tobagonian, this is your business. You could support this and then go back and vote your party. Nobody's stopping you from being a part of your party. We have to put Tobago people's business first, because at the end of the day, this would redound to the benefit of every Tobagonian. No, what we have before us right now is better than anything that has ever been offered to us in the past. And we may say, we sent down to Trinidad that we want X, Y, and Z, and the bill has fallen short in this way or that way. That is because it's a conversation, it takes cooperation, it's a marriage between Trinidad and Tobago. When you go into a marriage with somebody, you don't get all you want. There has to be some compromise, because you're taking some from one to give more to the other. And you have to get, it's about cooperation, it's about conversation, it's about compromise. So to say, if we don't get exactly what we want right now in one fell swoop, we don't want nothing, we don't want anything at all, I think it would be foolhardy, especially considering the work that all of us have put into this journey. Yeah, so we are at a serious turning point in our history, and I think we have a duty and a responsibility to do right by all those who have fought in the past for internal self-government for Tobago. And this vote or this support for internal self-government, whilst it's about us, it's more so about our children and what we are creating for them socially, economically, so that they can live a better life. And we can do what we want to do as Tobagonians as it relates to our development. What is interesting and what is also beautiful is if you want to know what the committee had considered, you can know, because this information is available. Every single piece of advice from every legal person, the UNDP, all of it is on the parliamentary website. And for those of you who are pretending that you're seeing it for the first time, it has been there since June of 2021. A matter of fact, since April of 2021. So for those who are saying, we need more time to consult our people, what were you doing? 2021, 2022, 2023, now we're in 2024. This reminds me of the whole Sandal scenario, where Watson Duke and his minions had said, when we come in, we will bring Sandals, just not now. The thing is that we have done the work, and this is the best that this parliament has to offer, after consulting people from different sides of the divide. So anybody outside now saying, not now, later, it would be a selfish move. It would be unwise to do so, because we know what we have now. And you may not have a prime minister that is dedicated, that is fearless, that have the belly and the grit to bring this type of legislation and get all his members of parliament to agree on the government side, and then convince some independents and so on to agree to get this thing this far. Because I remember at Joint Select Committee when we were working on the percentage for the allocation, there are those who pull out their calculator and say, well, if they're asking for 8%, then that would mean 8% for two constituencies. That means 92% is left for 39 constituencies. 92 divided by 39 is 2 point something. So why must they get 4% and we get 2 point something? To get this far with that kind of thinking, I say, let's give it our best shot and try to get what's before the committee of the whole passed and continue the journey. And as the document, it's 758 pages, the explanatory document on the parliamentary website, the report from the committee. It gives you all the explanation that from here we will continue to add and add, because you won't get everything right. That's what law is about. That's what development is about. That's why there is a parliament. We come back and we change law and we improve to suit the time, to suit what's going on in our development. So I think that the time is now. There is no better time to get this done, especially considering the work that we have put in from 2007 all the way to date. So I think that's where I'll end my introduction, and we'll look more at all the different provisions as we go on later tonight. Yeah?
Thank you, Minister. Let's put our hands together for MP Tobago Western Minister. You know, a true foundation she just laid out as to how we got here, where we were, and how we got here. This time I want to bring MP Ayanna Webster-Roy into the conversation very quickly as well, so that she can give her brief remarks. MP Webster-Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll hear me? I'm not hearing.
One.
Okay. You'll hear it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask a question. How many of you in here would like to see your children achieve more than you would have achieved? Show of hands. Or your nieces, your nephews. Right? We all want to see your children achieve more. Why is this important for children? Why is this important for Tobago's men and Tobago's women? Why is this important for Trinidad and Tobago on the whole? Now, I recently came back from a conference in Colombia. It was the first coming together of ministers around the world to treat the issue of violence against children. And I remember one of the young presenters on the closing day said, children aren't just the future, we are the present, we are the now. And they need to have a voice and an opportunity to shape policy. When I reviewed the bills, and I reviewed it not from a legislative perspective, not from the perspective of a member of parliament or even a minister, when I went through the bills, I looked at it from the perspective of a woman and as a mother. So I want to discuss with you how, from the perspective of a mother as a woman, we would benefit. How, from the perspective of an average Tobagonian, we would benefit from all the proposed changes that would come from these bills. And I had a conversation with my colleague today on the flight coming up, and she said, Ayana, I don't think we're getting any support. And I said to her, Shamfa, I ain't get that all is lost feeling as yet. I said, I'm not getting that gut feeling that all is lost. I said, I'm still living in hope until that final vote. I still have that gut feeling that things could turn around. And I said, try things will turn around. We are seeing more and more where Trinidad and Tobago collectively, Trinidad and Tobago has been trying to establish better policies, better programs, a better framework nationally for our nation's children, recognizing that the children of Trinidad and Tobago are the ones to take us into a better place, a better future, a better society. And there has been concerted effort across the aisles. When we put out policies and programs, you would often hear voices on the opposition bench speaking, but then there will be the few who would speak in support. And because I strongly believe there is this yearning amongst the Trinidad and Tobago population to set a better foundation for all our nation's children, that is why I haven't given up hope. I haven't given up hope that the bills will give us the opportunity to have a stronger Tobago Island government, one that would have the opportunity to establish laws and policies to directly impact the children of Tobago. And while our children and our communities will benefit directly, I often say, if something good is happening in Tobago, the ripple effects would transcend and reach out and touch people in Trinidad. And if something bad is happening in Trinidad, obviously we will be impacted in Tobago. So there is this national cry for a better society for all. I remember in preparing for the first round of presentation at Calder Hall, I would have come across some newspaper articles that indicated when Trinidadians were polled about this issue, the average Trinidadian stood in support of Tobago getting greater autonomy. The average Trinidadian, when polled, indicated they wanted Tobagonians to have the opportunity to chart their own destiny, to create laws to impact the people of Tobago, because the average Trinidadian recognizes that a stronger, better Tobago equals a stronger and better Trinidad and Tobago. One of the things that would have hurt me as an average Tobagonian, and I said recently to friends and colleagues, is that it's unfortunate that those who are charged with the leadership of Tobago today have turned the issue of Tobago's right to self-determination or quest for internal self-government and greater autonomy into a political tool. And some people have become political prostitutes. But the only thing is they aren't selling the body, they're selling Tobagonians' right to self-determination. And that is troubling, that is hurtful, because I reflect on the words of Dr. Winston Murray in 1977, when Dr. Winston Murray addressed the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and he said at the end, he laid out 7 principles, and at the end of the 7 principles he said, all we want is a piece of the action, no big thing. And when I talk to my constituents, when I talk to people in Charlottesville, in Lansome, in Belgarden, in Mount Grace, in Sergeant Kim, when I talk to people in Tobago East, they're saying, we're asking for much, you know. We just want our own space, our own place, or right share to the pie. We want to be recognized within this unitary state called the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. That's all they're asking for. And that is what these bills provide, the opportunity for us as Tobagonians to stand side by side with Trinidad and progress together within the unitary state called the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to go through some of the things Dr. Morris said because it resonated well with me, and I'm sure it's going to connect with the people of Tobago. In 1977, he said, when he stood on the floor, permit me to read 7 principles of internal self-government for Tobago. It is all based on the principles of natural law, which is God's law, and the 7 principles are enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. The 7 principles are also enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. My countrymen from Canaan, from Egypt, a very significant name, Charlottesville and Speyside, have asked me to read these 7 principles, not only for this house, but for Trinidad and Tobago. 1, unity. By unity, we mean to strive and maintain control of our lands, our villages, in all areas of life in Tobago. 2, self-determination. To define for ourselves, speak and defend ourselves, instead of being defined and spoken for and defended by others. 3, collective responsibility. To build and maintain our community together and to make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and to solve them together as Tobagonians. 4, cooperative economics. To build and develop our own businesses, places, stores, cinemas, brick factories, ice factories, etc., and to profit from them together. 5, other purpose. To make as our collective vocation the building and development of Tobago, our national community, in order to restore the former greatness of its people. 6, creativity. To do always as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than when we inherited it. And 7, faith. To believe fervently in Tobago, its leaders, its people, and the truthfulness and conviction of this national struggle to run our country without seceding from Trinidad, end quote. When you examine Dr. Morris' 7 principles, and when you interact with Tobagonians now in 2024, what Dr. Morris yearned for in 1977, and what the average Tobagonian is clamoring for in 2024 remains the same. And as Dr. Morris said, no big thing. We want a piece of the action, but you know what's the problem? Unfortunately, for some persons who have been placed in positions of leadership and authority, who have had the ability to influence the opportunity for us to get what we have been yearning for, they have used our desire, our demand, our request for internal self-government, for a stronger Tobago Island government with powers and authority to put laws and policies and programs in place to directly benefit the people of Tobago and ultimately the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Some of those who have been placed in position of leadership and authority have used this as an opportunity for their own personal gains. And Tobagonians must stand up and speak out against that. We have to do it, because if we don't, we're going to place our children and our children's children at a disadvantage. What the laws present now as proposed, they give us much more benefits than what we gained out of the Act of 1996. And aren't we thriving as Tobagonians now in this current context? Compared to some of the communities in Trinidad, we are thriving. So imagine with a little bit more financial allocation. Imagine what a little bit more power would do. Imagine what an island government with the ability to create laws for the people of Trinidad. Imagine the type of Tobago your children would inherit. And just picture it, a more stable society, a more just community, a better Tobago for all. And as I said at the beginning, if Tobago prospers, if Tobago is thriving, Trinidad and Tobago will prosper, and Trinidad and Tobago will thrive. This is not just a Tobago fight. This is a national fight. And I want to challenge every single Tobagonian to take up the mantle and use your voices for good. Use your power of influence for good. Too many times we stay silent and sit back. And after the fact we say, we coulda, we shoulda. But this is not the time for that. This is not the time for us to gamble on our ability and the opportunity for us to create laws to shape our island the way we want it. This is not the time for us to sit back and say we coulda, we shoulda, when we know ultimately our sons and our daughters will benefit from what is proposed within these two bills. So I want to take this opportunity to call on every single Tobagonian man, woman, boy and girl, and to call on those friends in Trinidad. The percentage that the newspaper said that are standing in support of this cause, to raise your voices and send a strong signal to those who lead in Tobago at this time, to join the People's National Movement on this quest. Join Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley and his members of Parliament who are lending their voices to the support of this significant, progressive piece of legislation. And for those persons who come from Tobago East, we know that we have the power to stand up and act. After all, it was because of the Belmana riots we became the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago. At this point in time, I'm calling on Tobago East to stand up and use your voices for good. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, MP. All we want is a piece of the action. Yeah? All we want is a piece of the action. And I think the pieces of legislation that are before the Parliament are more than just a piece of the action. It takes the Tobago House of Assembly and Tobago in a significantly positive direction that benefits not only Tobago, but Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite at this time the political leader of the Tobago Council, Senator Ansel Dennis, to bring his brief remarks at this time. Let's put our hands together.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone gathered here this evening. Good evening to the persons viewing this meeting online on the Facebook platform and on YouTube as well. It's a pleasure to share this stage with two distinguished women, Tobago West MP Mrs. Shamfa Kodjo-Lewis and Tobago East Member of Parliament Mrs. Ayana Webster-Roy. Ladies and gentlemen, the People's National Movement is leading the charge when it comes to Tobago's autonomy. We are taking responsibility for this process. The government is supporting the two bills in the Parliament, and as I said before, we are guaranteed, Tobagonians are guaranteed the support of 22 members of Parliament in the lower house and 15 senators in the upper house. And 3 of those senators on the government side happen to be Tobagonians. So, on November the 3rd, we had a similar, well, a different meeting. It was more of a political platform in Calder Hall, where we brought to the public information regarding the bills, regarding the process, and we focused particularly on the benefits of these bills to Tobago and to the people of Tobago and to the country by extension. We are here this evening using a different format, a town hall meeting, stepping away from the platform, and I'm going to try my best this evening to stay away from any pick-on and busing of files and that sort of thing. And at some point in time, you, the people, will have an opportunity to interact with all three of us by way of putting questions to us concerning this issue of Tobago's autonomy. Let me also remind you that tomorrow at 1 p.m. there will be a people's caravan, and again we are taking the opportunity to ensure that we spread the message of Tobago's autonomy far and wide. So the intention is to venture into as many communities as possible in Tobago, starting off in Crown Point, and we'll be making our way up to this part of the island all the way to Roxborough, and then we'll go through the rainforest, the beautiful rainforest, down to Palatavere, Castara, Muraya, Mason Hall, until we get back into Scarborough. And we are simply using all our resources, all our power, all our time, all our energy and effort to ensure that we inform, educate, and edify the people of Tobago when it comes to Tobago's autonomy. And there is no other political party on this island and in this country that is more capable and more equipped and more suited to taking responsibility for this process. So I want to talk about two things: a bit of the history and the benefits to the people of Tobago, because I understand that not many people will read the bills. That is the reality. Maybe 5 to 10% of Tobagonians may really take the time to sit down and read the bills page by page. And therefore, as members of this party, it is important for us to, as we communicate with the people of Tobago, that we are able to tell them the specific benefits and the ways in which this piece of legislation, or those two pieces of legislation in the Parliament, will change the lives and the livelihoods of the people of Tobago. So, in terms of the history, of course, the first version of a Tobago House of Assembly Act was passed in 1979, I think it was, or 1980, and we operated under that act for a number of years. Of course, in 1986, there was a general election and the NER. And while there isn't an NER party at this point in time, we know that the ANR over the years broke off into several splinter organizations, the DAC, the TOP at one point in time, Tobago Forwards, PDP, and it is safe to say that the NER today is represented in the form of the TPP. So, after that general election of 33-3, it is important to note that in the Parliament at that time, the NER had a super majority, meaning they had sufficient votes, sufficient members of Parliament on their side in the majority to do anything they wanted by way of lawmaking. So they could have changed the Constitution without any support from the PNM, because the PNM only had 3 seats in the Parliament. At that time it was 36. And interestingly, the people of Tobago did not benefit from any improvements in our situation. We remained under the Tobago House of Assembly Act from 19 1980. Then in 1996, that was when we got the first improvement, where Act 40 of 1996 found its way to the Parliament, and at that point in time it was the UNC in government. But interestingly, the NAR won the 2 Tobago seats during that period, and they made a decision to join with the UNC and give them the 2 Tobago seats to form the government. And at that time, during that period that government was in power, we got some improvement with Act 40 of 1996. Interestingly, and we must note this, Act 40 of 1996, though it gave us some additional fiscal resources, it did not give the people of Tobago, and specifically the legislature that we elect, any power to make laws for the good governance and order of the island of Tobago. And it is very interesting to note that. And the reason I'm saying this is because when it comes to autonomy, and the word autonomy simply means the ability to govern ourselves. Yes, if you check the dictionary, you will find that the definition is very close to the definition of independence. But as it relates to government, autonomy is not the same as independence. And of course, we are fully aware that the people of Tobago, we are not asking for independence or secession at this point in time. We are simply asking for the opportunity to govern ourselves as an island. And that cannot be achieved, that cannot be possible without the power to make laws. And Act 40 of 1996, as approved by a UNC government in partnership with the NAR, I think the leader of the NAR at that point in time was a senior member of the cabinet in that UNC government. We got an Act 40 of 1996 that did not give us lawmaking powers. And therefore we existed under that arrangement from then to now for a number of years. Until 2004, the Tobago House of Assembly, the PNM Tobago House of Assembly, led by the great Orville London at the point in time, embarked on a process to change our circumstances in Tobago, because we always felt that Act 40 of 1996 was inadequate, especially, as I mentioned before, since it did not give us the ability to make laws. When you examine that act, in order for the Tobago House of Assembly to make any law regarding anything right now, they must draft a bill, go to the Assembly legislature up at Jerningham Street, just overlooking James Park, for those who don't know where it is. That's the same place that Watson Duke and they marched around 7 times when we had the 6-6 tie. And they will debate those bills, and the bill is passed, and once it is passed, it has to go to the cabinet of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and then that cabinet gets to determine if it goes to the parliament. And then if it makes its way to the parliament, then it is the parliament that then has to debate and give support, which is similar to what we're trying to achieve now to get the autonomy bills passed. So the same parliament nationally will have to approve any piece of legislation to become law. And of course, the Tobago House of Assembly Act prescribes that it will be a Tobago law, right? So we do not have lawmaking powers. So in 2004, we had the John Prince Committee charged with the responsibility to consult with the people of Tobago so that we could continue this fight. because we must note that we did not stop at the Act 37 of 1980. We did not stop with Act 40 of 1996. We continued to discuss the matter, we continued to ventilate the matter, and here we are again seeking a further change. So over those years, the John Prince Committee had several meetings across Tobago, consulting with Tobagonians, and following that process, in 2013, when the PNM won the THA election 12-0, a very interesting development took place. 𝐓𝐿 Charles, former Chief Secretary, the late 𝐓𝐿 Charles, reached out to the once again elected Chief Secretary at the point in time, Mr. London, for a meeting the same month of the election. Mr. London agreed and the gentlemen met, and coming out of that meeting, they agreed that in order for us to really achieve this objective of greater autonomy, especially the kind of autonomy that will allow us to truly govern ourselves, then there was a need for us to put aside our political differences, and they agreed that Mr. London will take off his PNM hat and Mr. Charles will take off his, I think his party at the time was Tobago Platform of Truth. Platform of Truth, right? And Ashwood Jack decided to take off his TOP hat, Tobago Organization of the People, and we knew that by the month of February, by the time they had this second meeting, Mr. Jack pulled out of the arrangement, but Mr. London and Mr. Charles, along with Mr. Calendar and Mr. Neil Wilson and Rennie Dumas and Ingrid Melville and Senior Counsel Gilbert Peterson and several other well-respected Tobagonians continue the work, continue the consultations, continue the discussions from 2013 until 2016, where I was fortunate to be part of the assembly that passed a bill, and that bill represented the wishes of Tobagonians. And I want to take the opportunity to correct a piece of misinformation. The bill that left the Tobago House of Assembly and that went to the Dr. Keith Rowley cabinet in 2016 was transferred to the Parliament untouched. Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley made absolutely no changes to the bill that came from Tobago, right? So Tobagonians are not to fall for the mischief and the misinformation that is out there, that the PNM changed the bill and the PNM tampered with the bill. The bill went from the cabinet in its pure form, unchanged, to the Joint Select Committee of the Parliament. And it was through the work of that Joint Select Committee that the wishes, they weren't necessarily demands, they were wishes, because we always understood that one, Tobago cannot give itself autonomy. It requires the Parliament. And secondly, in order to get any bill passed in the Parliament, it requires consensus, it requires negotiations, because there are very few pieces of legislation, especially meaningful legislation, that the government with 22 seats could pass on its own. So the bills went unchanged, passed in 2016 by the THA, to the Cabinet, to the Joint Select Committee of the Parliament, who worked on those bills. The Member of Parliament for Tobago West went through that process, so I will not repeat. But there were several matters to be discussed. Experts were involved in the process: maritime law experts, legal experts, energy experts, constitutional experts, all kinds of experts. Politicians from across the region were involved. They looked at the situation, and we came from one single bill to two bills because we recognized that we needed one separate bill to establish the new governance structure for Tobago, called the Tobago Island Government, and a separate bill to make the changes to the Constitution. And here we are today. So quickly, what are the benefits of those bills? How will they change the lives of the people of Tobago? And the first thing is the money. These bills, or at least one of the bills, prescribes that the minimum allocation to the Tobago Island government will move from 4.03% to 6.8% of the national budget. What does that mean in dollars and cents? I am sure you have been hearing the complaints of this Chief Secretary, Farley Augustine, and the excuses about the things they are unable to do. They can't pay gratuity, they can't do this, they can't fix the road, they can't fix the drains because they don't have enough money. Of course, they are traveling. And of course, they have enough to give contracts to their friends from Trinidad. But the last budget that was read by Minister of Finance, Mr. Imbert, prescribed that Tobago be allocated $2.59 billion. If the bills that are in the Parliament were the law today, then that allocation given last September would have been $4.06 billion, which meant that your assembly, your government in Tobago, would have had available to service the people of Tobago an additional $1.5 billion. Now I can tell you, from a P&M perspective, what we would have been able to achieve with $1.5 billion additional. Right? For example, we had on the cards a farmland development program, which was a program aimed at developing several estates across Tobago to the tune of about $80 million. And that program would have placed lands in good, fertile locations with the available or with the required infrastructure in place, utilities, electricity, water, etc., to approximately 200 or so farmers. We would have been able to do additional housing developments. Currently, the housing list in the Division of Settlements is around 7,000 applicants. To date, this administration, for 3 years, have not been able to build any significant housing development. Right? Turpin Bend in Roxborough, that is a critical, not Roxborough, Charlottesville, that is a critical project. $40 million thereabout. We require a marina in Tobago that is going to cost a couple $100 million. Plymouth needs a proper jetty. Palatovia needs a proper jetty. Charlottesville Community Center. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some things that if the P&M was in the THA, we would have been able to do. If we were in the THA, Charlottesville people would have gotten a community center. The pavilion right down the road in Goodwood would have been completed. The indoor sporting complex in Backlet would have been completed. All those projects you see languishing now, we would have completed them. But we must understand that an additional $1.5 billion available for the government of Tobago to spend is going to redound to the benefit of the people of Tobago. Let's look at the development program. Typically over the years, the development allocation, and I'll look at the last 10 years, is most often between $200 million to $400 million. You don't get more than that. That's your development program. And for those of you who might be wondering, what is the development program? The THA gets two separate allocations. Recurrent, that is what you use to pay your salaries and buy your goods and services, paper, water. That is what you use to keep the government operating, to keep government turning over. That's recurrent. Development money is what you use to make things happen physically on the island. Your roads, your bridges, your drains, your community centers, your sporting facilities, everything that you see happening in Tobago over the last 20 or so years, between 2001 to 2021, all those community centers. This community center that we are occupying now, development program. So that is what that money is used for. That money is also very critical to the Tobago economy, because it is through that development spend that we are able to engage dozens of contractors and business persons who will do work for the Tobago House of Assembly, and in so doing that work, they will create job opportunities for a number of Tobagonians. And I can tell you at one point in time, Tobago contractors were employing upwards of 2,000 persons on the island doing work for the Tobago House of Assembly. That has changed, and I've said many times in the public why it has changed, so we're not dealing with that tonight. But the point I'm making is that your development money is extremely critical to the economy of Tobago. It allows you to fix roads, build new roads, build community centers, build marina if you want to, build indoor sporting facilities, what we used to build, the massive cultural complex. All the development that you could think about must be financed by your development program. How will these bills affect Tobago's development allocation? So as I said, 6.8%, looking at the last budget, would carry it up from 2.59 to $4.06 billion. Now, of course, autonomy, these bills also allows us to get additional responsibilities. So you will need to set up additional divisions to discharge those responsibilities. For example, you will need a division of legal affairs, because you now have your lawmaking powers. You now have responsibility for some aspect of the registry and stuff like that. So you will need now a separate division of legal affairs. You may also need a division of public administration and maybe one or two other divisions. Now, of course, that is going to increase your recurrent expenditure from about $1.8 billion a year to, let's say, $2.5 billion a year. However, remember that your total allocation at 6.8% is moving to $4.06 billion. So even if your recurrent increases to $2.5 billion, you still have available for development $1.5 billion, just over that. Currently, we're only getting $300, $400 billion. So the bills will immediately give Tobago 3 or 4 years worth of development money in 1 year. 3 or 4 years is a term. So you're getting a term, a whole term worth of development money in one allocation. So don't let anybody fool you to tell you that the additional money is only to administrate the various additional responsibilities that we'll be getting. There is no way, even with autonomy, that Tobago's recurrent expenditure should exceed $2.5 billion. And that is a very generous figure. Now, if you intend to travel the world, and you intend to have a party and a fete every single week, and you intend to employ all kinds of unqualified people, paying them ridiculously high salaries unnecessarily, then of course it may exceed that. But any serious government serious about Tobago's affairs, under the new arrangement, should not spend more than $2.5 billion in recurrent, and therefore you have upwards of $1.5 billion available for development. More roads, more drains, more community centers if you want. Now the PNM built so many community centers, I'm not sure Tobago needs another one. more sporting facilities, you name it. We will be in a position to do a lot more for the people of Tobago. Final thing, and possibly more important than the money, is the lawmaking powers. I sat in the Tobago House of Assembly as an assemblyman for 9 years, from 2013 to 2021. For those 9 years, the legislature of the Assembly met once per month, every fourth Thursday. And every fourth Thursday, the most you can do, of course, you will put on your nice jacket, your nice tie, and you will put on your nice perfume, and you will go in there feeling like a big man, feeling like you're representing people. The most you can do when you go there is debate and pass motions. So, as an assemblyman, that's what I did for 9 years. Now, of course, you had your other responsibilities in a division as an assistant secretary. But as an assemblyman, all you did, or all you were able to do, and all the current assemblymen are still able to do, is to debate motions. Now, what is a motion? A motion is a document where you will take a particular issue to the legislature, you will lay out the issue, and then you will ask the House to resolve to do certain things. And that motion is supposed to act as an instruction to the executive to execute certain responsibilities. But that motion, or those motions, had very little impact, if any, on the people of Tobago. And in closing, I want to give you a first-hand experience. I was elected Chief Secretary in May of 2020, during the pandemic. In discussions with stakeholders from the tourism sector and the maritime sector, we determined that one of the critical issues that we needed to deal with in Tobago was the protection and the usage of the Buku Marine Park. Why? Because we had issues with touting, we had issues with, and we still have those issues, by the way, with boat operators operating unsafely, recklessly in some cases, placing the lives of both locals and tourists in grave danger. And we recognize that all it took was one accident, one mishap, to severely tarnish the reputation of Tobago as an island. So I decided as Chief Secretary that that is an issue that we need to deal with immediately. So of course, we got to work, we did the consultations, we met with all the various stakeholders, and we were advised that this requires lawmaking. Because a policy by itself, while a policy may instruct, there are no penalties for breaching a policy really. So in order to treat with that issue, we were advised that, look, the Parliament never put any legislation in place to treat with that, and maybe Tobago should look at establishing law. So we looked at the Tobago House of Assembly Act. We followed the Tobago House of Assembly Act. We drafted a bill, took it to the Tobago House of Assembly, debated the bill, passed the bill unanimously back in 2021. We are in 2024, and I have no clue where that bill ended up. The same happened to Mr. London when he was Chief Secretary, when they looked at a police bill to treat with policing in Tobago. That bill never saw the light of day. The bills that are before the Parliament will have established in Tobago our own legislature, where our 15 assemblymen and the councillors selected to be in that house will form a legislature with the president. And if we determine, whoever is the administration of the day, if they determine that particular issues, such as the Marine Park, that is only one example, there are several others, require lawmaking, then they can do that. They can draft a bill, they can take it to the House, support the bill, and once that is supported and passed by the House, all that needs to happen after that is for the President to give assent, and it becomes a law that can be effected on the island of Tobago. No need for cabinet, no need for national parliament. So from 1996 to now, or 1980 to now, Tobago, your assemblymen that you elect and that the taxpayers pay to represent us and treat with our issues here, from then to now, your assembly has never made one single law. The parliament making a law how often? Every week? But the parliament have their agenda. The parliament's agenda is the national agenda, which is the national parliament. And what are the issues engaging the attention of the parliament? Crime, etc. So who is taking care of Tobago's issues? We must be in a position to take care of our own issues. And these bills will give us the lawmaking power to make laws for the good governance and for the order of the island of Tobago on behalf of the people of Tobago. And I will stop there.
Thank you. Thank you, political leader. I hope that after such very concise remarks by all three panelists, I'm hoping that we still have questions, right? So the time is now yours. To the members of the audience, even to those online, we are asking you if you have questions. You can post your questions on the comment section of the live, and we will do our best to answer the questions. So the mic is open. There's a mic in the middle of the hall. You are asked to approach the mic, and you can ask your question to the panelists.
Thank you, Senator. Let me start the ball rolling. First, I want to, of course, congratulate the team. MP Tobago West, Ms. Shamfa Kojo-Lewis, of course, MP Tobago East, Mrs. Diana Webster-Roy, and our political leader in really pushing this autonomy forward. But let me get to my question. The political leader alluded to it in his conversation when he indicated that the bills, after a series of consultations, was sent to the cabinet, and the cabinet, without any changes, and the cabinet sent it to the Joint Select Committee. I want to point this question directly to my hard-working MP, Ms. Kojo-Lewis. Tell us, I want some clarity. At that level, when it came to the joint, were there any changes made to these bills? And if there were, could you indicate what those changes are? Okay. And then I have a follow-up if you, and based on what you answer.
Your question is if changes were made before
no, when it get to your level.
Okay, so the Assembly passed a motion somewhere around October of 2016 to pass on their draft to the central government.
Correct.
That was at the end of 2016. In 2017, we as a cabinet took that time to make ourselves familiar with what was brought to us by the Tobago House of Assembly. And then in 2018, it was sent to Joint Select Committee.
Just what we got from the House of Assembly is what was sent to the Joint Select Committee. Now, I hear many people saying, well, why what is before the Parliament now isn't the exact same thing as what was sent to Joint Select Committee? It cannot be. Because you sent it to Joint Select Committee for us to do further research, for us to draft it in proper legal terms, for us to consult experts and be guided by the legal experts to develop it into proper legislation. So, and what you would find is some of what we sent to the Joint Select Committee or to central government saying this is what Tobago wants speaks to secession, speaks to when you want to go your own way, when you want to separate, you don't want to be a part of the unitary state. So in certain paragraphs and we are saying that we want to remain a unitary state, but yet we want to do things like Markov or economic zone, maritime economic zone and so on. So when you have senior councils and the legal luminaries and the United Nations and so on saying to you, this is the type of terminology that's used for independent states. So if you're talking about separating or seceding and becoming an independent state, then that is the language you use. But if you intend to remain a unitary state, then that is not something to put in the legislation. Yeah? Another thing, another example of something we had sent to Trinidad, because I had been a part of the consultation going from place to place in 2008, 2009, around that time, right? All the way to 2016. Another thing that we sent is we wanted equality, we wanted equal status. And one of the pieces of advice given to us was to say that we want equal status as one state would not be right. Yeah? What we want to say is we want to have all citizens having equal access to opportunities, because you're already one state. It's two separate islands, but one state. So within the state, you can say we want equal status in the one state. You're one state. So based on the advice of the legal luminaries, the United Nations Development Program and so on, it was instead crafted to say we are speaking to equal access to opportunities and so on for the people of both islands. That's two examples. So every single clause that was sent to central government and to the Joint Select Committee, we did further research through using the support of local institutions, local experts, the advice of other countries that would have went through the same type of or similar type of experiences, and legal luminaries internationally for the advice to craft it properly and to say what we need to say, because at the end of the day, we said we wanted to remain a unitary state while some of the language spoke to, like if we were trying to be independent. Yeah?
Just to wrap up, for further edification, would you say that these changes would significantly impact the development of Tobago?
No, I wouldn't say so unless Tobago
has changed its mind and wants to go its separate way and secede. And I know based on the information and based on the discussions all the time that I have been a part of the consultation, from Mason Hall Government School to Signal Hill Secondary to when we went to Trinidad at St. Augustine, Tobagonians did not vote for, or Tobagonians, when we voted at Signal Hill, we did not vote for secession. So if the main aim is to remain a part of the unitary state, then we have to craft the legislation in such a way that to honor that desire to remain a unitary state. It's like in one side of our mouth, we want the freedom and independence of being separated, but we want the security of being together. So you sort of have to choose and strike a balance as it relates to the legislation. You can't use language that speaks to secession if you're trying to remain a unitary state. And this was crafted by members of government, opposition, and independents based on the advice of the legal luminaries. And we continue to bring persons to the Parliament to discuss with us, from Rita Pemberton, then Chief Secretary at one point in time, Mr. Kelvin Charles was the Chief Secretary, Alan Richards, and those persons came in and had their say. So every comment submitted, we took them to the legal luminaries, and then we were guided accordingly. And it's so interesting that when you look at the report from the committee, all the signed documents and the advice from the legal luminaries are all there. We did not make it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that clarity.
Thank you, MP. Let's take another question. If you choose, we're asking those who are asking the questions, you could share your name and your community, but that is if you choose to do so.
President, good night. Gerard Brown from Sergeant Keene. I think this question is posed to Madam Minister. With the passing of the new bills, what would be the working relationship between central government and the THA?
BV?
Working relationship. The working relationship.
Working relationship.
Well, of course, there will be increased responsibility for the Tobago House of Assembly, and there are some items that would remain under the remit of the central government, and in some areas it calls for collaboration. Let's take, for instance, the allocation. Whilst the Tobago House of Assembly submitted a request for allocation for 8% of the budget, after speaking with the Central Bank and Ministry of Finance and all the experts in that area, we came to a place of that 6.8% was a fair place to settle at. However, the legislation also includes the establishment of a financial review commission, and the FRC is made up of members from central government and members from the Tobago House of Assembly, and through the FRC, the Tobago House of Assembly makes requests for, submit their requests for increased allocations to work on specific projects and so on from the Tobago House of Assembly. It also, the FRC is also proposed to ensure that, for instance, taxes for Tobago collected in Trinidad, make sure it goes to Tobago, make sure that the finances are shared properly so that Tobago can develop. So the members of the FRC coming from the Assembly and the central government will meet each year and look at the Tobago House of Assembly proposal for allocation in excess of the 6.8%. So to say it's capped at 6.8%, that's not true. Once the FRC is doing its work and meeting as it should, and I trust that they will, then they propose or they make their request for more funding, and they do the negotiation, or they work it through with the Ministry of Finance, and he cannot withhold that funding unreasonably. That is what is said in the legislation.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anyone else?
Good afternoon to the panel. My question this evening for MP Minister Cudjoe Lewis: is there a difference between greater autonomy and the right to self-determination?
I'm passing that to answer. I think he explains that pretty well. Go ahead.
Greater autonomy, self-determination, two sides of the same coin. As I said before in my presentation, autonomy is really about the right to govern ourselves here in Tobago. And the word autonomy takes on different meanings in different jurisdictions. It is safe to say that Tobago is somewhat autonomous at this time, but we're seeking further autonomy. And I also said that a very necessary feature of being autonomous is the ability to make laws. Because if you can't make your own laws, somebody else would have to make them for you. And currently, that is the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, thank you.
Let me go a little further there as to the exact words coming out of the report. What the House of Assembly said, the Tobago people and the House of Assembly sent to central government, clauses 4 and 5. The bill referred to the committee in clauses 4 and 5 that self-government for Tobago within the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago will be based on 2 principles. A, the right of the people of Tobago to determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. And B, equality of status between the island of Trinidad and the island of Tobago within the sovereign democratic state of Trinidad and Tobago. So in that one sentence in B, right, you're saying that you want equality of status between the island of Trinidad and the island of Tobago. And then you came again to say within the sovereign democratic state of Trinidad and Tobago. So you're using independent language in the beginning of the sentence, and then in the end we're using language that's saying we are one democratic state of Trinidad and Tobago. And this is what the advice coming in says. In principle, the legislation seeks to establish the island of Tobago as a self-governing region with executive and lawmaking powers exclusive to Tobago. Fundamentally, Tobago will remain represented in the national parliament and be able to participate in lawmaking for the entire country. These are deep issues which require consideration for several concepts and models of democracy. Regarding the principle of equality of status, your committee was advised that this is a principle of international law used in the context of sovereign states or independent states. We're not trying to be two separate independent sovereign states here. Constitutional experts were concerned that instead of the usual state-to-state application, Clause 5 of the bill proposed to insert this phrase into the Constitution, which referenced to the 2 units within our single unitary sovereign state. Your committee took into account the many representations made on this point and the fact that the stakeholders both in Tobago and in Trinidad questioned the rationale for the statement. Your committee agrees that in a unitary state, there is no need for words referring to the equality of status between the 2 islands. Further, the island of Trinidad and the island of Tobago are not units in a federation of states, where each unit can be properly distinguished, and such a phrase referring to equality of status between each unit in such a federation might arguably be justifiable. An appropriate amendment would have is therefore proposed by your committee.
Okay,
so
thank
you. The
you.
committee said we're going to amend that part in order to maintain the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, MP. Thank you, political leader.
I think the bugbear for Tobagonians is the fact that in the Constitution, we still refer to as a ward of Trinidad, and when they talk about wanting that equality of status, that is what they're talking about. They don't want Tobago to be regarded as a ward of Trinidad. So that's where the confusion comes in.
But the Parliament has already approved the report of the committee, and the report of the committee said that the part of our legislation that speaks to Tobago being a ward of Trinidad and Tobago, And we also have to state that it's not only Tobago that's stated as a ward. When you look at St. Patrick and St. George and so on, they are stated as wards of Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah? But anyway, the committee has already accepted the report. The Parliament has already accepted the report of the committee, which says that that section would be repealed and no longer listed as a ward. So that is dealt with.
Thank you, MPs. Sure.
Good evening, everyone. Delano Drewfield from Spring Garden. It is widely acknowledged that the bills introduced in 2013 did not include public consultations with the people of Tobago, which played a critical part in its lack of support when brought to the House back then. However, during his address to the people of Tobago last Sunday, the Chief Secretary referred to the 2013 bills as the preferred options. My question to anyone on the panel is, aside from the absence of the consultation with Tobago's people, what were the shortcomings of the bills proposed by Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar in 2013 in comparison to the current bills?
So I'll take that one. So I want us to recall what transpired in. Now remember, I said before in my earlier statements that the Tobago House of Assembly, led by Orbit London at the time, was in a process of undertaking consultations and discussing this issue and ventilating the issue, because it was always felt that that issue should be championed from Tobago. In the middle of that process, the then government, led by Mrs. Kamla Prasad-Bissessar, appointed a so-called independent person by the name of Hamid Ghani to lead some sort of discussion on Tobago's autonomy in Tobago. They came to Tobago, I don't think they had more than 5 meetings over a couple weeks, right? Then the Attorney General went to Parliament and came up with, well, even before they got to Parliament, they had this green paper circulating in Tobago on Tobago's autonomy. No involvement of the THA, no involvement of the people of Tobago. It was simply an embarrassing attempt at the point in time to hoodwink the people of Tobago and to use this autonomy issue as a political football, which the people of Tobago rejected resoundingly, 12-0. I must also add that when a bill was finally drafted, and I want the people of Tobago to go back and take a look at that bill. The bill was tremendously flawed. There was no way for that bill to get passed in any serious parliament, right? Now, you will hear the Chief Secretary saying, unfortunately, that the bill was going to give the people of Tobago 8%. Ladies and gentlemen, there was no 8%. If you read the bill, you will see that the bill had a minimum of 6.9% and a maximum of 8%. So therefore, there was no guarantee of 8%. What we have before us is a process that started in Tobago, that engaged the people of Tobago in several years of consultations. Following those consultations, we had a bill drafted by the people of Tobago, supported by your Tobago House of Assembly in 2016, and it went to the Cabinet, then a Joint Select Committee, and now we have these bills in the Parliament waiting to be passed, hopefully. So let us forget this discussion about Kamla Bill and UNC Bill of 2013. The only bill that is relevant at this point in time, or the only bills, are the 2 bills that are in the Parliament.
Thank you.
And in addition to that, there was the concurrent list with no specification or no specific difference as to who was responsible for what in the concurrent list. Then they gave you law-making powers, but then said that the Parliament could then pass laws that would make your laws mean nothing. And in the case of a public emergency, the Parliament can make laws for items on the Tobago list with no definition as to what is a public emergency. So those were some of the items that caused us much problems in 2013, causing Tobagonians to reject it. If you go back, it's available on the Parliament website. You would see the different items, and it's a matter of fact, it was worse than what we have now at 40 and 1996. So I was really disappointed when Chief Secretary Fali Augustine took that low to tell Tobagonians that what Kamala was offering in 2013. Oh God, we know you owe Kamala and you have some favors to pay, but don't use us like that now. That was a low blow for us. So when you compare it, it's chalk and cheese and a total disrespect to the Tobago people. What we have now at 40 of 1996 is way more superior than the foolishness that Kamala tried to shove down our throats 5 days before an election in 2013.
Yep. And again, that bill, if you read it, it was tremendously flawed. The bill had many, it was impassable.
Take another question.
Good evening to the panel. As we banded the conversation about Parliament, it seems like Parliament, the word Parliament seems to be wearing its head quite a lot here this evening. I would like, with the passage of these bills through the Parliament, so to speak, would the present Tobago House of Assembly become more involved with the passage of these bills in a positive way through the Parliament? And if so, if that is the case, what areas of function would overlap, so to speak?
I don't think I get the question clearly. You're asking if the Tobago House of Assembly.
What role would, in other words, as it stands now, as the minister was saying prior, how important Parliament is, this whole concept of Parliament, well laid out, what has to take place for a bill to get to pass through Parliament. At that point, because as it stands now, THS has its role to play, the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago has its role to play. So a question that anyone looking on would like to know, because this Parliament seems to be the overarching figure, the overarching power placement, so to speak. So if the bills pass through that Parliament, in other words, we get the two bills.
Right.
What function now would there be an improved role by the Tobago House of Assembly?
Of course.
In the Parliament?
Well, not in the Parliament. But what we need to accept is that even when these bills are passed, you will still have a government of Trinidad and Tobago, and you will still have a national parliament with Tobago representation. So Tobago will get 2 bites of the cherry. We have our 2 MPs who will be in the parliament and participate hopefully on the government side to treat with issues for the entire country, including Tobago, because Tobago is still part of the country. And the central government will continue to have some level of responsibility, though greatly diminished, in Tobago. The Tobago Island government, because it will no longer be a Tobago House of Assembly, the Tobago Island government will have, in addition to the additional areas of responsibility, the power and the responsibility to make laws for the island of Tobago. And therefore, this arrangement where in order for us to pass any law in Tobago, we have to go to the Parliament, that will be completely removed from the equation.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Thank you, political leader. We want to remind those viewing online that you can post your questions, and your questions will be asked and hopefully answered as well.
So while we await, or before you go, I just want to treat with one matter that I saw in the public domain, where somebody was asking the question if Tobago will continue to get money from Trinidad. I want to categorically state that Tobago has never gotten money from Trinidad. Tobago gets its money from the revenues of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And like any other area in the country, Tobago benefits from those revenues to discharge the responsibilities of the public administration, in this case the Tobago House of Assembly, on behalf of the people of this island. And I want to say as well that because of Tobago's presence on the map, there is a Block 22 which has energy resources that the entire country can benefit from. So Tobago, due to its location and due to our activities here, we contribute in some way to the revenues of the country. And therefore, any money that Tobago gets is not from Trinidad. It is from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago through the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So I just wanted to deal with that. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening to the panel. Sean Robley, Belgarden. Why was there a need to draft a second bill after the one that was sent to Parliament following widespread consultation?
Right, so one bill, as I said before, deals specifically with amendments to the Constitution. So when you look at that bill, that Constitution Amendment Bill, you will see that every clause in there attempts to amend some area of the Constitution to facilitate Tobago's improved circumstances. And then the other bill is the Tobago Island Government Bill, which establishes the Tobago Island Government and its structure. So that bill will essentially replace the Tobago House of Assembly Act, the current Tobago House of Assembly Act. Yeah?
Thank you, Pierre. MPs, any follow-up there? We have a question before the other person comes. We have a question from online.
I think he also needs to know that when we had Act 40 in 1996, we also had Act 39 of 1996, which dealt with the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's important to enshrine some of these things in the Constitution because it's more difficult for somebody to come with a simple majority and change after. When it goes into the Constitution, it takes 3/4 majority of the Parliament, lower house and upper house to change. But when it goes into a regular bill, more than likely it requires a simple majority, which means if I have more seats than you, then we can pass it without having the benefit of the opposition and the independents and so on.
So another thing I want to address is a fear. And this fear seems to permeate especially Tobago, where people are asking the question about, and I'm seeing a comment right now on the live, about whether or not Tobago is ready for autonomy and the need to set up industries. And once again, autonomy is not independence. This is not about getting up one morning and discovering that Tobago is totally separate and cut off from Trinidad. And of course we are ready. We are ready for a greater share of the national budget because all that will mean is more money to spend. Now, how you spend the money is a very critical factor, and that is up to you, the people of Tobago. You get to elect a government into office who you believe could spend the public money in a responsible way. That is your choice. You get to elect whether TPP or PNM or PDP to spend your money. The other thing is the lawmaking powers. You already have an assembly legislature. You already have a system that allows us to elect assemblymen. All we need to add to that is the necessary legal support that will allow that legislature to properly draft bills, right? And it will be a similar kind of structure, similar to what exists in the national parliament. So you have the necessary support to draft bills, and those bills will go to the assembly. And just as we debate motions now, we will now move from just motions to debating serious bills and it happens in the parliament every day where they get together and discuss and debate bills, and they go back and forth and they try to come up with the best possible bill that will work to the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Likewise, the elected assemblymen and the councillors will be expected to conduct similar debates to come up with the best pieces of legislation that will treat with the affairs of the people of Tobago in this case. So of course, we are ready. There is nothing to be afraid of. Tobago will continue to develop. As a matter of fact, the same industries that people are talking about, we will have more resources available to us to assist in developing those industries, like your agriculture sector, your tourism sector, etc., etc. So there is nothing to be afraid of. We are ready as a people for this legislation being passed. Of course, we'll have to set up new structures, and I will hope that the people of Tobago will see the need to change the current Tobago House of Assembly administration.
So we're going to take this question before we take one from the floor. Question is, what if someone violates a law made by the THA? Who pays for keeping that person incarcerated?
So again, there will be no THA. So it will be a law made by the Tobago legislature.
Yes.
Right? And likewise, when somebody breaks a national law, depending on the nature of the law, if there is some criminal penalty attached to that, then that is a matter for the police. So any kind of law, whether it's a Tobago law or a national law, is going to be a matter for the systems currently established by the country to treat with. And I think I saw that question. So Tobago is not asking for its own judicial system. Tobago is not asking for its own prison system or anything like that. Of course, we have to take some responsibility for how we treat with the conditions of the prison in Tobago in partnership with the Ministry of National Security, right? So I hope that answers the question.
So, we take another question from the floor.
Good evening to the panel. Thank you all for bringing this autonomy conversation to the East. It's well needed. My question surrounds defining maritime boundaries, because being someone out in the street, there seems to be some mischief makers trying to convince persons, especially those who probably aren't familiar with the current arrangement. If we support the present bills, we would be giving up our maritime boundary freedom. In other words, they're saying to them that if we support those bills, where you see the water, and I'm quoting, where you see the waves breaking out there, that is considered Trinidad. And there are, it might be funny, but it's a serious thing, and it's the person who is, the mischief makers who are saying these things has the ear of some people. So if we can give some clarity in terms of what is the present maritime boundary status in terms of nautical miles or however it's defined, what will be the new arrangement in the new bills,
so,
and how important it is for us to actually define maritime boundaries when it comes to autonomy and this question of greater autonomy.
So currently we have administrative responsibility for 6 nautical miles. The new bill will move that to 11 nautical miles. Any discussion about 200 nautical miles is a discussion about independence. And you see, Tobago people need to ask themselves or ourselves the question. We are in this situation where some are saying we want 200 nautical miles, and they're not budging from that. And it's fine, they could say that if they wish, because Tobago is a free place, Trinidad and Tobago is a free country. Anybody could say anything. There are some who will say they want independence. Watson Duke just in 2019 was talking about secession. So people are free to say anything, but let's be sensible and pragmatic. how will the 200 nautical miles benefit us currently if our intention is not to be independent? Now, if it is to be independent and to break away from Trinidad, then sure, you cut off with your 200 nautical miles, you take whatever resources you have and you go on your own. But if we're still talking about a unitary state arrangement, with Tobago having further devolved powers, especially the ability to make laws and a greater share of the national budget, then what really is this 200 nautical miles discussion about? And how exactly is that going to benefit us here in Tobago? Because the same bills still prescribe that we receive a minimum of 6.8% of the national budget. So how is the 200 nautical miles going to benefit Tobago if the discussion is not about independence? Now, I can understand we need to have administrative responsibility to manage our marine parks, to treat with fishing, and which is a part of our agriculture and stuff like that, to treat with our marine affairs on the island. And the prescription there is 11 nautical miles, which is more than the 6 that we have now. But outside of that, how is it really sensible and beneficial to the people of Tobago to be talking about 200 nautical miles unless they're talking about independence? And tell that person that 11 nautical miles is way beyond where the waves are breaking on the beaches.
From the position of the committee, and for those who want to read it for themselves, it's located in page 13 of the committee's report. In clause 6 of what the Tobago people and the Tobago House of Assembly sent to the central government and the Joint Select Committee, we were asking that there be delineation of or definition of the island of Tobago by reference of maritime water surrounding the island in the interpretation clause of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So we want it to be defined that this is Tobago, the land, and these miles and so on. Several representations were made by the committee on this issue. On the one hand, Tobago stakeholders contended that it is possible to define Tobago within the Constitution, not by mere reference to the landmass, but by reference to Tobago waters. On the other hand, constitutional experts as well as specialists and jurists in the law of the sea disagreed and cautioned against such an approach. The committee was advised that as Trinidad and Tobago is an archipelagic state, it is therefore defined as one unified legal entity or jurisdiction in all relevant laws. The nationhood of Trinidad and Tobago is built on the concept of unity between the islands and the interconnecting waters. Those seas are regarded as a unifying, not as a separating element. It is the basis in which Trinidad and Tobago archipelagic status rests. Additionally, Justice Anthony Lucky, retired judge, International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea, opined that if the islands of Trinidad and Tobago are separately defined within the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago by reference of the archipelagic waters belonging to the state, that effectively is an action of separation and will likely provoke several issues in current national laws and international conventions, protocols, and treaties to which Trinidad and Tobago is a party. Therefore, the seas around, between, and connecting the islands of the archipelagic state of Trinidad and Tobago are under the sovereignty of the state, irrespective of the individual breadth and dimensions of the separate islands of the archipelago. I think at the end of the day it says all the waters that surround us belong to us all, Trinidad and Tobago. So there are no Trinidad waters. So there are those who are trying to make you think that outside of the 11 miles, which is the same 11 miles that Kamala and them was offering, anyway, outside of the 11 miles, everything beyond that is Trinidad waters. No, the 11 mile is stated just for the administration of the Tobago House of Assembly Act as it relates to the items for which the House of Assembly or the Tobago Island government is responsible. But all the waters of San Fernando, Point Fortin, all down there, Moruga, all those waters are all waters to Trinidad and Tobago waters. Yeah?
Additionally, if we would have gone the way of making those changes, separating the waters, some of the resources we now benefit from as a nation, Trinidad and Tobago, an archipelagic state, we would have lost out on that. So it would not have only affected Tobago, but it would have affected Trinidad and Tobago. So it's important to reiterate what Shampa said. All waters are under the jurisdiction of a unitary state. And again, waters don't divide us. When you look at it from maritime law, it unifies us, and that's what gives us the power of all the resources spread across Trinidad and Tobago. And the 11 nautical miles, they're much more than what we have now. And we could have the opportunity for it to be used to benefit of future generations. As Mr. Dennis said, what is presented now, and as Shampa said, what is presented now with the Constitutional Amendment Bill and the Tobago Island Government Bill, they are far superior to what we have existing now under Act 40 of 1996.
And let me just add it that we have to be very wary of people who are encouraging us as Tobagonians along a path of 200 nautical miles or nothing. Look at Tobago now. Look at what we have. Act 40 of 1996. We are getting 6.8% of the national budget, and I gave you the figures in dollars and cents before. We are getting lawmaking powers, additional responsibilities that will represent a major improvement for the people of Tobago once governed properly. And there are those that will tell you that we're getting all of that, but because we're not getting 200 nautical miles, which, as the MP disclosed and which, as I said before, represents independence and secession. And there are those that will encourage us along a path that if we're not getting that, we do want nothing. So we have to be wary of those kinds of conversations.
So I see we have a question, but let me just take this one, since as we within the vein of the nautical miles. There's a question online that says, if the THA currently has administrative responsibilities for 6 nautical miles, how can the THA enforce its administrative control, and will the Tobago Island government have a mechanism to do the same in law? So the person is asking, how would you be able to enforce your administrative controls of the nautical miles?
Right, so I gave an earlier example with the marine park.
Right.
Now, at the point in time, we were proposing a piece of legislation that would have also allowed us to designate other marine areas, sensitive areas, as marine parks as well, because currently under law, there is only one marine park in Tobago, which is the Boko Marine Park. But you have other reef systems in Speyside, in Culloden, in Mount Turvin, and other sensitive areas that need to be managed. And we were proposing a legislation to allow us to be able to designate those areas without the intervention of any ministry in Trinidad. But of course, the law had to go to cabinet and then the parliament, and we know what became of that. So that is one way of being able to enforce some level of authority. That is one way in terms of managing the marine space that you have. And of course, there are other things like fishing, right? Like the conduct of boat operators, jet skis, and so on.
Thank you, Pierre. Question from the floor?
Good night to the panel. Good night to everyone that's listening on the live. My name is Abby PNM Allen from Argyle. I have two questions. Did the PNM always have greater autonomy for Tobago on its agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Since 2000 and even before that. But if you're talking about PNM Tobago, since 2001.
Okay.
And it is the PNM government that supported the internal self-government motion that was brought by Robinson. When Robinson left the chamber and left Winston Murray there to continue the debate on the motion, it was over and Padmore and other PNM members that helped Winston Murray. And it is the PNM central government that passed Act 40 of 1996. So it has always been a part of our agenda.
And it's the PNM government that preserved the work of the committee.
Yes, and this PNM government that preserved the work of the committee so that we can still be having this conversation, bringing the work of the 11th Parliament, which ended in 2020, into the new 12th Parliament, which is still in session today.
Okay.
And it's the PNM government trying to save it in the next couple of months so that we don't lose all that we have gained over the last months and years.
Thank you for that. Actually, that question was for the persons that's not brave enough to remember my name is PNM.
So you're already convinced.
Yeah, right. Next question. Was there any consultation with Tobago people about autonomy?
Years of consultations. Several years. Donkey years.
Over 44, from 2007 to sending the draft to the Parliament, you had about 44 consultations with the people of Tobago, both in the East and the West, and then they broke it down to consultations for religious leaders, consultations with fisher folk, with farmers, you name it. The consultations were far and wide. There were smaller consultations, and then there were larger ones with over 400, 500, even 600 persons showing up and having their say.
Thank you very much. I could just say something. I don't have no more questions.
Go ahead.
I just want to say to the PNM of Trinidad and Tobago, you guys are doing a great job. I appreciate you, and I know there are a lot of persons out there appreciate you guys. All you keep fighting the good fight, there are persons behind you. We love all you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have another question from the floor.
What I would want Abby to do to show her appreciation is to go out and convince as many persons as possible that you could influence to loudly sound their support for the bills. We have the opportunity to go back to the House soon, a committee of the whole, and that will give us the opportunity to do further work. But if Tobagonians are silent, then it gives the opposition and the naysayers in Tobago the opportunity to say that this is not a reflection of the will of the people of Tobago. But if enough of us speak up, speak out, and demand that the bills as they are now be passed, and it be a foundation so that in the future our children and their children could build on it, then that would be a good thing. So I challenge you, Abby, to go out and convince as many persons as possible to start raising their voices. Simply say, I support the bills.
And we have a habit in Tobago where we start speaking up after we miss the opportunity. You all remember Sandals? We were quiet, the naysayers were making a lot of noise, destroying Sandals' reputation, derailing a very important project. As soon as Sandals pulled out, big meeting in James Park, business stakeholders, all of a sudden everybody started speaking up. Let's not do the same when it comes to this opportunity that is before us.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, MP.
Hello, good night. Yeah, my name is Kelvin Fritt. My question tonight is the Fiscal Review Committee of the Parliament. if the committee make a recommendation to the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Finance does not accede to those recommendations, is there any legal recourse for Tobago for the Finance Minister to implement what the committee would have recommended?
Well, the FRC is made up of persons from the Tobago House of Assembly and from the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance is the chairperson, and there will be somebody from Tobago who is the deputy chairperson. That's the
Secretary for Finance.
Yeah, I think the Secretary of Finance is the deputy chairperson. What is said in the report that was accepted is that he cannot deny the request unreasonably. He has to present the reasonable explanations as to what is happening in the economy or so on, as to why it cannot be facilitated in the amount or at a lesser amount or so, but he cannot just say no without any proper reason. What you say?
Thank you, MP. Whilst we're waiting on a question from the floor, a question that came online was, why was there a delay?
Exactly.
Why was there a delay in the passage of the bills, these current bills? Why was there a delay in the passage?
Well, after 5 years of work at the Joint Select Committee, the bills went to the Parliament floor for the first time in
2021.
June of 2021. And we heard the debate, we all heard the debate, but I will blame the delay on us here in Tobago, you know, because up to that point we were speaking with one voice, and then unfortunately we had Farley Augustine, who at the point in time was the assemblyman for Palatavia, Lansome, Speyside, and former Chief Secretary 𝐓𝐻𝐼 Charles started going down their own path. Interestingly, Mr. Charles reintroduced an aspect of the discussion that was introduced before and dispensed with at the time, and a decision was made that we're not going down that road now as Tobagonians, and that part of the discussion is about the direct election of a Chief Secretary. So that was reintroduced then, unfortunately, contrary to Tobago's consensus, contrary to our position. And then eventually they wrote this letter to parliamentarians. And then when it was time for the UNC members of parliament to get up and debate the bills and the merits of the bills and the shortcomings of the bills and the provisions of the bills and suggestions to improve the bills, you know what they were debating? Policy and 𝐓𝐻𝐼𝐍, all of them. Policy, 𝐓𝐻𝐼𝐍. Tobagonians don't want the bill. Tobagonians were not consulted. Tobagonians were not consulted. Not enough consultation.
And you see, we're not talking to ourselves, and this process is not about us only. It's not about bringing it to the floor and taking it to a vote when the PNM feels like. We know we don't have enough votes to carry. We know we don't have enough votes to make it pass. Yeah, so you have to listen to what is coming from the opposition. You have to listen to what is coming from the independents. Look for the right time. If the last time we came in 2021, Tobagonians and persons were saying, Trinidadians now seeing this, we need some more time, Tobagonians need some more time, then okay, we give some more time before bringing it to a vote. Because if you bring it to a vote and that vote doesn't carry, if it isn't passed, then you have to prepare to lose all the work. So the best thing would be to wait until you think you have some support. We haven't heard any additional support coming from the Tobago House of Assembly, the current Tobago House of Assembly. And if the opposition is operating based on what they get from their UNC side in Tobago, then they would vote that way. I already saw Dinesh Rambali MP for Chaguanas West. He did a piece in the papers this week saying a hard no to the Tobago bill. So you get an idea of what they're going to vote. Hence the reason I could have said to Minister Webster Roy, I don't think we're going to get enough votes, because if Rambali could come out to say this is the position of the opposition that they're not going to support, that's why I could turn to her and say, I don't think we're going to get enough votes, because they're saying we are listening to Fale and them in Tobago, and they're not singing like, they're not supporting. So therefore the UNC is operating based on their brothers and sisters, their partners in Tobago. So I'm not confident. Until if that is what the UNC is operating off of, yes? And then we need 9 votes from them. And they're saying to us this week that a hard no to the bills. I'm not really expecting magic when I go into the house. It's kind of like when athletes don't make the time at home. You know you're running slow home. You're looking at what other people in other countries running. They're way ahead of you. What magic you expect on Olympic Day? You understand what I'm saying? So if this week, so you can't go to the Olympics and then you vex, you so hurt, you crying. You know you were slow when you was home. There are some countries that don't even send their athletes if they know they're slow and they're not matching up. They don't waste the money to send their athletes. But thank God Trinidad and Tobago still send the athletes. Let me get back to this. So if we are looking at what's coming from the opposition side, knowing we need 9 of their votes to pass, and they're saying to us 2 days ago that they're listening to what Tobago is saying, and we need more consultation. Cuba South also said, Cuba South also said that there is need for more consultation in Trinidad. If they're pulling out these excuses at the very last minute, I don't know what magic is going to happen between now and then, but I'm hopeful. I'm just calling it as I see it.
But there's a level of hypocrisy as well, because I heard Senator Anil Roberts saying that the UNC is prepared to listen to the Tobago House of Assembly because they are in charge of Tobago. No problem with that. In June of 2021, who was in charge of Tobago? In June of 2021, we had a Tobago House of Assembly. I was the Chief Secretary. I was saying support the bills. And I was giving all the reasons like I'm doing now on why the bill should be supported. But the UNC didn't listen to me then. So how come now they're prepared to listen to the Tobago House of Assembly? So clearly we are seeing that it's not the Tobago House of Assembly they are prepared to listen to. They are prepared to listen to Fale and friends. Right? Now, I'm a bit more optimistic because I still feel that if the people of Tobago over the next few days demonstrate resoundingly that we are in support of these bills, then the UNC, if not the entire UNC, then I feel that at least the 5 dissidents will have a heart and support the people of Tobago. Because we have 2 choices, you know. 2 choices. Support the bills, get the bills passed, we get 6.8% minimum, lawmaking powers, additional responsibilities, vast improvement in the quality of life of the average Tobagonian, and improvements to the country by extension. The second choice is to not support it, keep Act 40 of 1996, keep the limitations of that, can't pass a law. Imagine you electing 15 assemblymen and all they could do is dress up in nice tie and jacket and go to the house and debate motion. They cannot pass one law for you. We will continue to hear the complaints about money, no money to do this, no money to do that, while they travel, and your life will not improve. That is the choice. Those are the two choices. And guess what? In addition to that, we will not have another opportunity to be in this position for at least the next 20 years. That is the reality. So which means the battle that we are fighting, if we don't win it now, my children may follow in my footsteps and may get elected to the Tobago House of Assembly and go in the same assembly and still cannot pass a law 20 years later. Is that what we want as Tobagonians? Because, as I told you before, it's a free country. So people continue to say all kinds of things. People continue to say we should have a federal system. People continue to say we should have a confederation. People continue to say that we should secede. People would continue to say that we should get 200 nautical miles. Then somebody will say that we should get 400. All kinds of people continue to say all kinds of things. So why not accept this, pass these bills, get the improvements, and we could still continue to talk and argue about confederation and secession and federation and unitary state, and some may even argue about, some may want a monarchy just now, who knows. As a matter of fact, we have something resembling a monarchy in Tobago with a king.
Do you have a question from the floor? I see.
Good evening again. Well, this is primarily for the parliamentarians on the panel. I recall, and the political leader spoke about what the current assembly does in terms of debate motions. Yes. And I could recall a motion being brought to the House to treat with this autonomy issue. And it was agreed on unanimously. And our goodly chief indicated that he is going to write to all the parliamentarians indicating certain, whatever, I can't remember what you were saying. So I wanted to know if you all have received any such correspondence thus far.
I didn't receive anything. You received anything, letter from the Chief Secretary? No.
And now I'm hearing that there is some committee setting. So I'm trying to get a sense of what was said, what was agreed on, and what is existing now. Because the side chatter is going to take us backwards when we're trying to move forward, and I'm hoping that we can move forward in terms of greater autonomy. But these kind of side chatter will just delay and belabor the point. And our minister just highlighted some issues there that is concerning to me in terms of what some of the oppositions are saying. So I just wanted to know if one thing he would do right is stick to his word, and did he write that correspondence in terms of sending whatever correspondence he said he was going to send to all the parliamentarians regarding Tobago's autonomy?
Well, recently he said he would send some correspondence. I haven't received a correspondence yet. I like to call it, like I see it, the chatter, the side chatter is deliberate. The side chatter is to cause distraction. Yeah, the side chatter is to send a message to Trinidad and to the UNC that the Tobago people and the Tobago House of Assembly don't agree with the bills. The side chatter is because they don't want the bills to pass, because they don't want increased autonomy to happen under the PNM.
That is it.
I'm calling it as I say it. So I have no problem with those who want to be hopeful. I'm hopeful too. But the facts are very clear before my eyes, and I see like a sandal situation trying to repeat itself. We want better, but we don't want better from them. And there is this posturing in many places in Tobago where we would take anything from the others. But the PNM, we don't want no good for them. We don't even want good from them. You understand? So that is where I see it. The chatter is deliberate. So it's important for us, not only as PNMites, but every right-thinking Tobagonian, because I remember the cross-section of Tobagonians who came from all walks of life, different political backgrounds, economic backgrounds, school children. We were all in Mason Hall when the consultations went to midnight. We were sitting there at 10 minutes past 12, yeah, having our say, yeah, and sitting in crowded, heated, no AC auditorium, Signal Hill Secondary, having our say late in the evening, late in the night. So we have to do good by each other and bring the work that we have put in to life, you know. But I think the chatter is deliberate. I think it's a distraction, and I think it's to throw off all that we're doing because they don't want this thing to be passed under the People's National Movement.
So, well, and the last time I checked, I am Tobagonian. So when they say that Tobagonians don't want it, I find that to be a very disrespectful statement. And I'm sure everyone in here is Tobagonian. And we're here because we want greater autonomy. We want to move forward. We don't want to go backwards. And I am sure, and I've heard most of the members on the panel said it before, that the bills may not be perfect, but they are much better than what we have now. So I can't understand how they use the excuse that Tobagonians are saying they don't want it. Who are these Tobagonians they're referring to?
You're listening to the voices of a minority, but if there's a saying that if when good men say nothing, then evil will prevail. If we're not speaking up, if Tobagonians are demanding from their leaders in Tobago that we accept this, that we take this step, then they can listen to the voices of the minority and say, well, that is the will of the people of Tobago. So how many of us have petitioned or assemblymen going to the office and saying, I am asking you as my elected assemblyman to support this bill? How many of us would have sent correspondence to the Chief Secretary saying, as a Tobagonian, this is what I am demanding? How many of us as Tobagonians would have sent correspondence to the opposition in Trinidad saying, I am a Tobagonian, and writing on behalf of me, my children, my household, my community, this is what we want. We have to speak up. And as I said in the beginning, we can't say if I coulda, shoulda, woulda. We have to be decisive now. We have to make our voices heard now. We can't wait until after the fact and say, oh gosh, if I didn't know, boy. Make no sense.
Well, it would be unfortunate if we do not, it would be very unfortunate if we don't get these bills passed. And and for someone who has a young family, I think it's, and for some reason, we really need the Tobago population to become agitated about it. Because, and to remove the misinformation that is being purported. Because, as we know, people tend to gravitate to misinformation much faster than the facts and the truth. So, we really need to take that step, and I'm glad that the opportunity presents itself now. And we have the various platforms that allows us to even reach persons faster. Because moving forward with something like this, I believe is in the best interest, particularly at this time for the people of Tobago, for the people of Tobago East in particular, in terms of development and moving forward. So,
and that is why we're having these forums, to edify people, to treat with the misinformation. Because one thing you guarantee is that when you come to a PNM forum like this, you're going to get truth, you're going to get facts, and you're going to leave informed and well educated on any particular subject.
So we're going to take the last question now from on the floor, and then we...
All right, good afternoon again. As we are on the topic of side chatter, so while I was sitting there, a colleague of mine messaged, and he was commending me for the question that I asked, but then he made this statement, why, Delano, why is this topic always brought up around election time? I say, Who tell you that? He said, but that is what they're saying. This topic is only brought up around election time. I know I've heard it many times that they said that the autonomy bill is a political football. So I'm asking any member of the panel to just address that, because it is something being circulated in the Tobago space right now. And I hope that my colleague is still listening so that he can get the answer to his question. Thank you very much.
The only time this issue came up around election time was on the cusp of the 2013 THA election. Those are the facts. After that, it came up in June of 2021. That was after we had the 6-6 election, and it was felt that in an attempt to improve Tobago's situation from 12 seats to 15 seats, that maybe we can consider attempting to pass some version of autonomy. That did not happen, so we just went and we did the simple amendment to the THA Act to move it from 12 seats to 15 seats, and we went into an election. Right? The work still remained in the Parliament, and because it remained in the Parliament, obviously if you do intend to waste it, you have to bring it back before the end of this parliamentary period. And we know it ends when? August next year. Yeah. So it has to come before that. And if an election is due in August of next year, or it could go as late as possibly November or December next year, and a THA election is due around the same time, then we're well within a year, well beyond a year of any election. So this issue is not coming up during any election. We don't have any election due until late next year. So again, the only time this issue came up during an election was when Kamla Prasad Bisesa, in the most disrespectful way, put together not even a committee. She sent one man named Hamid Ghani to do 2 weeks of consultation in Tobago. She had her Attorney General draft a green paper, and then following that, some piece of half-picked up legislation, and attempted to pass it through the Parliament, and it failed miserably 5 days before an election.
Thank you. We want to thank the panel. We want to thank MP Tobago West, Mrs. Shamfa Cudjoe-Lewis, MP Tobago East, Mrs. Ayanna Webster Roy, and the political leader Tobago Council, Senator Ansel Dennis, for being with us this evening. I think we had a wonderful session. I want to thank you for all the questions you posed. Those who were viewing online, we also want to thank you for the questions you shared. And the good advice that I got, or the number one advice I got from the MP Tobago East tonight, is petition those on the opposition side. Now, just as the Chief Secretary has the power to write letters to all parliamentarians, so do every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. You can pen a letter to all parliamentarians declaring your support for the bills that are currently before the Parliament. I want to remind you that tomorrow at 1 p.m. we continue and we take the message of Tobago's autonomy in the form of a caravan. As we move throughout Tobago, we begin at 1 p.m. at the Strawberry Beach Facility Car Park, and we make our way throughout the island preaching the message of Tobago autonomy. So ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, thank you all very much for being such a wonderful audience. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and we look forward to seeing you next Saturday evening at the Boku Multipurpose Facility, where the conversation continues again. Prepare your questions, prepare your friends, prepare your family to come out, get home safe, and do have an enjoyable rest of the evening. We also want to thank our operations officer for